My 31-year-old sister came back after her divorce with her newborn. I, 20, became the free nanny and burned out. When I booked a trip, she snapped, "Your fun matters more than my child?" Selfish, I left anyway. Days later, after arriving, I was terrified she had. "Your fun matters more than my child?" Selfish. She said it like she was spitting out something rotten. Standing in the kitchen doorway with Mia on her hip, still in her pajamas at 2 in the afternoon, hair unwashed for the third day running. The plane ticket confirmation was still glowing on my laptop screen where she'd been reading it over my shoulder. I closed the laptop. "It's a 5-day trip." 5 days, she laughed, but there was nothing funny in it. 5 days where I'm supposed to do what, exactly? Handle everything alone? You know I can't. You're her mother. The words came out flat. I hadn't meant them to sound harsh, but I also hadn't tried to soften them. Mia started fussing, and Lauren bounced her automatically, that motion she'd perfected over the past 4 months. 4 months since she'd shown up at the door with 2 suitcases and a car seat and mascara streaked down her face, saying Kevin had changed the locks while she was at her postpartum checkup. "I can't believe you do this to me." Her voice cracked on the last word. "After everything I'm going through. After everything you promised." I hadn't promised anything. That was the thing. She'd assumed, and I'd let her assume, and somewhere in the exhaustion of those first few weeks it had all calcified into obligation. But I hadn't promised. They'd been pushing like this for a while, really. Not just Lauren, our parents too, in their own gentler way. "Poor Lauren," they'd say. "She needs support. She's been through so much." And at first I'd agreed, because she had been through something terrible. Coming home to find your husband had packed your things into garbage bags and left them on the porch. Discovering he'd already filed for divorce before you even knew the marriage was in trouble. Finding out there was another woman, had been for months, maybe longer. So yeah, I'd felt sorry for her. I'd wanted to help. But help had turned into something else entirely. Help had turned into getting up at 2 a.m. because Lauren was too tired. Help had turned into missing my Tuesday night class because someone needed to watch Mia while Lauren had her therapy appointment. Help had turned into skipping work shifts, falling behind on my online coursework, watching my savings account drain because I wasn't earning and somehow I was still expected to chip in for diapers and formula when Lauren's money ran out before the end of the month. I was 20 years old. I was supposed to be figuring out my own life. Instead, I was living someone else's. "I'm going," I said. "The tickets are non-refundable." "Then get a refund anyway. Tell them it's an emergency." "It's not an emergency, Lauren. It's you not wanting to parent alone for less than a week." Her face went tight. "You have no idea what it's like. You don't have kids. You don't understand." "You're right." I stood up, tucking my laptop under my arm. "I don't have kids. That was a choice I made. This," I gestured vaguely at the kitchen, at her, at the baby monitor on the counter and the pile of burp cloths on the table and the bottles drying in the rack by the sink, "wasn't my choice. It was yours. I didn't choose for Kevin to. You chose to have a baby. You chose to keep her. Those were your choices. And I've been helping because I wanted to, but I don't owe you my entire life just because yours got hard." Mia started crying in earnest now, picking up on the tension the way babies do. Lauren was staring at me like I'd slapped her. "You're going to regret this," she said quietly. "When you need help someday and nobody's there for you. You're going to remember this moment." I walked past her toward the stairs. "My flight's Thursday morning. I'll be back the following Tuesday." I didn't slam my bedroom door. That would have been dramatic, and I was too tired for drama. I just closed it, locked it, and sat on my bed with my heart pounding in my ears and my hands shaking. The trip had cost me almost $800. Money I couldn't really afford but had spent anyway, booking a solo trip to see my friend in Portland because she'd been asking for a year and I kept saying I was too busy. Too busy with what? With a life that wasn't mine. With responsibilities I'd never agreed to. The burnout had crept up slowly. At first it was just tiredness, the kind everyone has. Then it was this heaviness in my chest when I woke up. Then it was crying in the shower for no reason, snapping at people over nothing, lying awake at night with my jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached. My roommate from freshman year had texted asking if I wanted to grab coffee and I typed out 3 different responses before giving up because I couldn't figure out how to explain that I couldn't leave the house because my sister might need me to watch the baby. I wasn't even living in my own apartment anymore. I'd moved back home when the semester ended, supposedly to save money, but really because my parents had made it clear that Lauren needed family around her. "That's what family does," my mother had said. "We show up for each other." Except showing up had become moving in. Moving in had become full-time childcare. Full-time childcare had become my entire existence, shrinking down to the size of this house, this baby, this endless cycle of feeding and changing and soothing, while my sister slept or cried or sat on the couch scrolling through Kevin's social media to see if he'd posted anything about the new girlfriend. I tried to set boundaries before. Little ones. I have class on Tuesday nights. Can you find someone else? I need to work this weekend. Maybe mom can help? Each time, somehow, the boundary had dissolved. The class wasn't that important, was it? I could make up the work. And mom's back was bothering her. And dad had that thing. And Lauren was so fragile right now, couldn't I see how much she was struggling? The thing about burnout is that it makes you stupid. You stop being able to think clearly. You start believing that everyone else's needs really are more important than yours, that you're selfish for wanting anything, that the exhaustion is normal and you just need to push through. You forget that you're a person too. The plane ticket had been an act of desperation. I'd booked it at 1 a.m. after a particularly bad day. Mia had been colicky, Lauren had been snippy, my mother had called to remind me that I should be grateful to have a roof over my head and I should try to be more patient with my sister. I'd sat in my room with my laptop and just done it. Clicked through the booking process in a daze. Entered my card number. Hit confirm. The confirmation email had felt like oxygen. Like I could breathe for the first time in months. That had been 2 weeks ago. I'd kept it quiet at first, not wanting the confrontation. But Lauren had seen the email notification on my phone this morning and asked what it was, and I'd been too tired to lie. Now here we were. The next 3 days were brutal. Lauren barely spoke to me except in clipped monosyllables. My mother called twice to try to mediate, which meant she called to tell me I was being unreasonable and couldn't I just postpone the trip until things were more settled? What did more settled even mean? Lauren had no job, no plan, no timeline for moving out. The divorce proceedings were going to take months. Mia was 4 months old. Nothing was going to be settled for years. I'm not canceling, I told my mother the second time. I need this. Need it for what? To party with your friends? To not have a breakdown. The words came out harsher than I'd intended. I'm exhausted, Mom. I've been running on empty since Lauren moved in and nobody seems to care. Silence on the other end. Then, we all have to make sacrifices right now. That's what family. I've been sacrificing. I've been the only one sacrificing. When does it end? She didn't have an answer for that. She just sighed and said she'd pray for me to find some compassion in my heart, which was her way of saying I'd disappointed her without having to say it directly. Thursday morning came. I'd packed the night before, quietly, keeping my suitcase in my closet so I wouldn't have to deal with Lauren's comments. I woke up at 4:30, showered, dressed, and carried my bag down the stairs in the dark. Lauren was sitting in the living room. I hadn't expected that. The lamp by the couch was on, casting yellow light across her face. Mia was asleep in the bassinet beside her. You're really doing this, she said. I told you I was. I thought you'd change your mind. I slung my backpack over my shoulder. Why would I change my mind? Because you care about your family. Because you're not actually this selfish. There was a time when that word would have gutted me, selfish. It was the worst thing you could be in our family. Selfish meant putting yourself first. Selfish meant not sacrificing enough. Selfish meant failing at the only thing that mattered. But standing there in the dark living room, looking at my sister's exhausted face and knowing that my own exhaustion was invisible to her, I realized something. She wasn't calling me selfish because I'd done something wrong. She was calling me selfish because I'd stopped doing something she wanted. Those weren't the same thing. I'll be back Tuesday, I said. There's pumped milk in the freezer. Mom said she'd come by Saturday to help. Mom's back is. Then figure it out, Lauren. She's your daughter. I didn't wait for a response. I walked out the front door, got in my car, and drove to the airport with the sky turning pink over the highway. The flight was 3 hours. I spent most of it staring out the window at clouds, feeling the tension slowly drain from my shoulders. By the time we landed in Portland, I felt almost human again. My friend Sarah picked me up at the airport with a sign that said jailbreak in progress and I laughed for the first time in weeks. The first 2 days were exactly what I needed. We walked around the city, ate food that wasn't reheated leftovers or whatever I could grab one-handed while holding a fussy baby, stayed up late talking about nothing important. Sarah didn't ask too many questions about the situation at home. She could see it on my face, probably. The hollowed-out look that burnout gives you. She just kept filling my glass with wine and telling me about her job and her terrible roommate and the guy she'd been seeing who kept calling his mother during their dates. Normal stuff. Stuff that had nothing to do with diapers or custody lawyers or my sister's endless grievances about Kevin. I turned my phone to Do Not Disturb that first night. I told my family I'd be mostly unreachable, spotty service, busy schedule, all the excuses I could think of. The truth was I just couldn't bear to see their messages. Every ping from home felt like a hook in my chest, trying to drag me back. On the third day, I finally looked. 14 missed calls from my mother. 9 from my father. 23 text messages, getting progressively more frantic. Call us immediately. This is an emergency. Something happened. Where are you? Why aren't you answering? Your sister needs you right now. My heart stopped. For one terrible second I thought something had happened to Mia. That she'd gotten sick, or hurt, or... I called my mother with shaking hands. She picked up on the first ring, finally. Where have you been? We've been trying to reach you for hours. What happened? Is Mia okay? Mia's fine. It's your sister. What about her? And then my mother told me, and the world tilted sideways. Lauren had been admitted to a psychiatric facility. Voluntary admission, technically, though from what my mother said it hadn't felt very voluntary. She'd had some kind of breakdown the day after I left, crying uncontrollably, saying she couldn't do it anymore, that she wasn't fit to be a mother, that everyone would be better off if she just disappeared. My father had come over to check on her and found her sitting in the empty bathtub fully clothed, holding Mia and rocking back and forth and not responding when he spoke to her. They're saying it's postpartum depression, my mother said. Combined with the stress of everything else. They're keeping her for at least 72 hours for evaluation. I sat down on the edge of Sarah's guest bed, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. Where's Mia? She's with us. For now. But your father and I can't do this alone. My back, you know how it is, and we need you to come home. I have 2 more days here. Your sister is in a psychiatric ward. My mother's voice went sharp. Surely your vacation can wait. I closed my eyes. The guilt was immediate and overwhelming, exactly like they trained it to be. My sister was suffering. My niece needed someone. And I was sitting in Portland drinking wine with a college friend like nothing was wrong. But underneath the guilt, there was something else. Something colder. What did her doctor say about outpatient resources? Is there a plan for when she gets out? We haven't gotten that far. We're in crisis mode right now. Right. But there will need to be a plan. Because I can't keep doing what I was doing. You understand that, right? That's why I left in the first place. I was falling apart. Silence. Then, I don't think this is the time to make it about you. I'm not making it about me. I'm trying to figure out what the long-term solution is, because the short-term solution of me putting my life on hold indefinitely wasn't working. Your sister needs help. That's all that matters right now. She needs professional help. Which she's getting. And she's going to need more of it when she gets out. Help I'm not qualified to provide. So you're not coming home. I looked at the plane ticket on my phone. Tuesday morning, just like I'd planned. I thought about changing it. I thought about rushing to the airport, getting on the first flight back, walking into my parents' house and picking up exactly where I'd left off. Taking over the feeding schedule and the night wakings and the endless needs. And I knew, with a certainty that felt like bedrock, that if I did that, I would end up in the same place Lauren was now. I'll be home Tuesday, I said. Like I planned. Mia is safe with you and Dad for 2 more days. Lauren is safe in the hospital where professionals are taking care of her. Nothing is going to change between now and Tuesday that requires me specifically. I can't believe you're doing this. I know you can't. But I am. I hung up before she could say anything else. The next 2 days were strange. The trip wasn't fun anymore, how could it be? But it wasn't the disaster my mother probably hoped it would be either. I was worried about Lauren. Of course I was. She was my sister. We'd shared a room growing up. She taught me how to use a tampon and covered for me when I snuck out junior year and held my hair back the first time I got drunk. I loved her. But loving someone didn't mean sacrificing yourself on the altar of their needs. That was something I was only starting to understand. Something our parents had never taught us because they'd been raised on a different gospel, the gospel of family first, always, no matter what it costs you personally. Sarah didn't judge me. She just kept being there, making me eat, sitting with me on her tiny balcony while I stared at the city and tried to process everything. It's not your fault, she said on the last night. You know that, right? Her breakdown isn't because you left. My parents think it is. Your parents are wrong. She's been struggling since way before you booked this trip. The breakdown was coming whether you were there or not. But if I'd been there... What? You would have magically cured her postpartum depression? You would have been able to prevent a mental health crisis by being slightly more available? Sarah shook her head. You're 20 years old. You're not a therapist. You're not a psychiatrist. You were never going to be able to give her what she actually needed. I knew she was right. Intellectually, I knew it. But the guilt was still there, lodged somewhere between my ribs, making it hard to breathe. I flew home Tuesday morning as planned. My mother picked me up at the airport, which surprised me. I'd expected her to be too angry to bother. She looked older than she had a week ago. Grayer around the edges. Lauren's still in the hospital, she said as we walked to her car. They're keeping her through the week at least. Maybe longer. How is she? Medicated, calmer. Talking to therapists every day. She unlocked the car with the beep. They said she's been dealing with depression longer than any of us realized. Maybe years. We got in the car. My mother didn't start the engine right away. She just sat there, hands on the wheel, staring out the windshield at the parking garage. I blamed you, she said finally. When it happened. I thought if you'd just been there, if you hadn't been so insistent on taking that trip. I know. But the doctors said. She trailed off, swallowed. They said she's been in crisis for a while. Long before you left. Long before the divorce, even. Kevin leaving just accelerated things. Okay. I'm not saying this because I think you were right to go. She looked at me then, and her eyes were red-rimmed but dry. I'm saying it because I don't want you to blame yourself for something that wasn't your fault. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even close to an apology. But from my mother, it was something. What happens now? I asked. With Lauren. With Mia. We're figuring it out. The hospital has social workers helping us make a plan. Lauren's going to need ongoing treatment. Therapy, medication, maybe partial hospitalization for a while. She won't be able to take care of Mia alone. So who? Your father and I are looking into options. There are programs for new mothers who need support. Respite care. That kind of thing. I blinked. This was more concrete planning than I'd heard from my parents in the entire 4 months since Lauren had moved in. And what about me? My mother's hands tightened on the wheel. We were wrong to put so much on you. I can see that now. You're barely out of high school. I'm 20. I was in college. You're still young. You shouldn't have been responsible for so much. That was unfair. She finally turned to look at me. You can go back to your life. Whatever that looks like. We'll figure out the rest. I didn't know what to say. This was more than I'd ever expected from her. More self-awareness, more acknowledgement. Part of me wanted to accept it at face value and move on. But a bigger part of me knew better. I'm going to need that in writing, I said. My mother frowned. What do you mean? I mean that you've said things like this before. That you'd handle it, that you'd figure it out, that you wouldn't lean on me so much. And then a week later I'm back to being the full-time nanny because it's just easier and I'm already here and it's only temporary. This is different. I know. Lauren being hospitalized is different. But I've heard you say it's different before. I took a breath, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm going back to school in the fall. I'm moving back to my apartment. I'm getting a job that works with my class schedule. And I need to know that when I do those things, you're not going to call me every time Lauren has a bad day and tell me I need to come home. We wouldn't. You would. You have. Every time I've tried to have my own life, something comes up. Some crisis. Some emergency. And maybe this time was real, but a lot of the other times weren't, and I can't tell the difference anymore. So I need you to promise me, actually promise me, not just say the words to get me to stop pushing, that when I leave, I'm leaving. That I get to be a sister, not a substitute parent. That I get to have my own life. My mother was quiet for a long time. I could see her processing it, weighing her options, deciding whether to fight or concede. Okay, she said finally. I promise. And if you break that promise, I'm gone. I mean really gone. I'll move somewhere you can't just show up. I'll stop answering my phone. I'll stop coming to holidays. That seems extreme. Maybe. But I've learned something about myself these past few months. I'm not good at half measures. I gave everything I had and it nearly broke me. So going forward, I'm setting boundaries that I can actually keep. And the consequence for crossing them has to be something real, or they don't mean anything. She nodded slowly. I could tell she didn't fully understand, didn't understand how serious I was, or why I felt I had to be this serious, but she was at least trying to accept it. Can we go home now? She asked. In a minute. I want to be really clear about one more thing. What? Mia is not my responsibility. She's Lauren's daughter, and Lauren's responsibility. If Lauren can't take care of her, that's a problem for Lauren and the professionals helping her and maybe you and Dad to figure out. I'll visit. I'll be a good aunt. But I'm not a parent, and I'm not going to be treated like one. I understand. Do you? Because 4 months ago you said you understood that Lauren just needed a little help while she got back on her feet, and then suddenly I was doing night feedings and changing diapers and missing my own classes to babysit. That was... She stopped, reconsidered. You're right. That wasn't fair to you. I'm sorry. An actual apology. I almost didn't recognize it. Okay, I said. Let's go home. The next few weeks were a careful dance. Lauren came out of the hospital with a treatment plan and a caseworker and a referral to a specialized program for mothers with postpartum depression. My parents had converted the guest room into a proper nursery while I was gone, something they'd refused to do before because it felt too permanent, and hired a part-time caregiver to help with Mia during the day while Lauren focused on her recovery. It wasn't perfect. There were setbacks. Days when Lauren called me crying, saying she was a terrible mother, she couldn't do this, She needed me to come over right now. But I held the line. I talked to her on the phone. I offered to call her therapist. I did not drop everything and rush over to rescue her. I can't be your emergency support, I told her after one particularly intense call. I can be your sister who loves you and wants you to get better. But when you're in crisis, you need to reach out to your treatment team. That's what they're there for. You sound like a self-help book. I've been reading a lot of them lately. She laughed at that, a wet sound that might have been half a sob. I'm sorry. For everything. For the way I treated you before you left. For calling you selfish. I know. I was so scared, and I was taking it out on you because you were there. I know. I'm trying to do better. I know. And I'm proud of you for that. But trying to do better doesn't mean I forget that it happened. It means I'm watching to see if things actually change. There was a pause. That's fair, she said finally. I probably wouldn't trust me either. I moved back to my apartment at the end of July. It felt strange at first, being in a space that was just mine, where nobody needed me for anything. I'd forgotten what that was like. The quiet. The freedom. The ability to eat dinner at 10 p.m. or sleep until noon without worrying about anyone else's schedule. My roommate from freshman year moved back in. We got into a rhythm. She worked mornings, I worked afternoons, we both took night classes and studied together in the evenings. It felt normal. It felt like the life I was supposed to be living. Lauren and I texted almost every day, but I kept it light. Baby photos. Updates on her therapy. Little jokes that didn't mean anything. The heavy stuff, the crisis calls, the emotional dumping, the desperate need for someone to tell her she was going to be okay, went to her treatment team. That's what they were paid for. That's what they were trained for. In September, a few weeks into the new semester, I got a call from my mother. Lauren's been offered a spot in a transitional housing program, she said. It's for single mothers. They provide childcare and job training and therapy all in one place. She'd have her own apartment but with support staff on site. That sounds great. She'd be moving out of the house. Out of state, actually. The program is in Ohio. I processed this. How does she feel about it? She's nervous. But her caseworker thinks it would be good for her. A fresh start somewhere Kevin can't just show up. Structure. Community with other mothers who understand what she's going through. What do you need from me? Nothing. My mother sounded almost surprised to be saying it. I just wanted to let you know. And to ask if you'd be willing to talk to her about it. She values your opinion. I called Lauren that night. She answered on the second ring, sounding tired but alert. Mom told you about Ohio, she said. Yeah. What do you think? I think I'm terrified. Moving somewhere I don't know anyone, with a baby, starting over completely? That's insane. Is it? Or is staying here insane? Where Kevin can contest custody every time he gets bored, and Mom and Dad are always hovering, and you never get the chance to figure out who you are without all of us telling you? Silence on the other end. You really think I should do it, she said. I think you should do whatever's right for you and Mia. But I also think that staying here hasn't been working. You've been stuck in survival mode since the divorce. Maybe you need to be somewhere that's actually set up to help you move forward. I'd miss you. I'd miss you too. But missing someone isn't a reason to make a bad decision. We can call. We can visit. It's Ohio, not Antarctica. She laughed, a small sound but a real one. When did you get so wise? Around the same time I got so tired. Turns out those two things are connected. Lauren left for Ohio at the end of October. I helped her pack, which felt like a kind of closure, putting her things into boxes, watching the evidence of her breakdown get sorted into keep, donate, and trash. Mia was 6 months old by then, chunky and smiley and blissfully unaware that her whole life was about to change. At the airport, Lauren hugged me for a long time. Longer than we'd ever hugged before. Thank you, she said into my shoulder. For not giving up on me. Even when I made it really hard. That's what sisters do. And thank you for leaving when you did. I know that sounds crazy, but if you'd stayed, I don't think any of this would have happened. The hospitalization, the treatment, the program. I would have just kept leaning on you until we both fell down. Probably. You saved my life by not saving my life. Is that weird to say? A little. But I think I know what you mean. She pulled back, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm going to do better. For Mia. For myself. I know I've said that before, but this time I have actual support. People who are trained for this. Not just my baby sister running on fumes. That's all I ever wanted for you. She picked up Mia's car seat and squared her shoulders. I'll call you when we land. You better. And then she was gone, disappearing through the security line with her carry-on and her diaper bag and her daughter, heading toward a life that didn't include me at the center of it. I stood there for a while after she'd vanished from sight. The airport churned around me, Business people rushing to gates, families wrestling with luggage, couples kissing goodbye, and I felt something I hadn't felt in almost a year. Light. Not happy, exactly. Not triumphant, just unburdened. Like I'd been carrying a weight I hadn't even realized was there, and someone had finally taken it off my shoulders. I drove back to my apartment, made myself dinner, sat on my couch and watched a terrible reality show and didn't check my phone once. When my roommate got home, she asked how I was doing, and I said fine, and it was true. The next morning I woke up to a text from Lauren. A photo of Mia in her new apartment, surrounded by boxes, grinning at the camera with 2 teeth poking through her gums. "We made it," Lauren had written. "This is the start of something." I typed back, "I'm proud of you." And I meant it. I really did. But more than that, more than being proud of Lauren for finally getting help, for finally being somewhere that could actually give her what she needed, I was proud of myself. For holding the line when everyone told me I was selfish. For leaving when leaving felt impossible. For understanding, finally, that you can't pour from an empty cup, and you can't save someone who's determined to drown you both. I put my phone down and got ready for class. The semester was in full swing, and I had a paper due, and there was a study group meeting later that I'd actually be able to attend for once. My life, the one I'd almost lost, was waiting for me. I didn't look back. Months passed. Lauren sent updates regularly, photos of Mia learning to crawl, then walk, then say mama. Videos of her own milestones too, a job interview she'd nailed, a therapy session that had been particularly breakthrough, a friendship with another single mom in the program who understood exactly what she was going through. We talked on the phone every Sunday. Actual conversations, not crisis calls. She told me about her week. I told her about mine. We laughed about our parents, who were lost without a daughter to fuss over and had taken up birdwatching as a replacement hobby. They bought binoculars, Lauren said. Actual binoculars. Dad has a bird journal. What even is our family anymore? Healing, I think, slowly. In our own weird way. I visited her in Ohio over winter break. Met her apartment, her friends, her support network. Mia didn't recognize me at first, I'd been gone too long. She was too young, but by the end of the visit she was reaching for me, giggling when I made faces at her. "You're good with her," Lauren said. "She's easy to be good with when I'm not exhausted." I know. That's my fault. It's nobody's fault. It was just a bad situation with no good options. She nodded slowly. "I'm sorry I called you selfish. I've been thinking about that a lot. About how that was the worst thing I could think to call you, because it's what we were taught to believe. That selfishness is the ultimate sin. But taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's survival." I know. I'm trying to teach Mia differently. To show her that her needs matter. That she doesn't have to sacrifice everything for other people to have value. That's good. That's really good. We were sitting on her couch, drinking tea while Mia napped in the other room. The apartment was small but clean, decorated with pictures Lauren had drawn in her art therapy sessions and photos of Mia at various stages. It felt like a real home. Like something she'd built for herself. "I have something to tell you," Lauren said. "Okay. I've decided not to reconcile with Kevin. Not ever. He keeps sending letters, asking for another chance, saying he's changed. But I realized. I don't want him to have changed. I don't want to go back to that life. Even if he became the perfect husband overnight, I've already moved on to something better." "How does that feel?" "Terrifying. And also really, really freeing." She smiled, and it reached her eyes in a way I hadn't seen in years. "I'm building a life I actually want. For the first time ever. It's hard, but it's mine." "I'm proud of you," I said. Same words I'd texted when she'd first arrived. But this time they carried more weight. "I'm proud of you too," she said. "For setting boundaries. For holding them. For showing me that it was possible to say no without the world ending." I flew home 2 days later. Back to my apartment, my classes, my friends. The life I'd fought so hard to reclaim. A few weeks into the spring semester, I got a letter from my mother. Not a text, not a phone call, an actual letter, handwritten on her good stationery. "Dear Sarah. I've been thinking a lot about what happened last year. About the way your father and I handled things. About the expectations we put on you that weren't fair. I want you to know that I see it now. How much we asked of you. How little we gave in return. How we used words like family and sacrifice to make you feel guilty for having needs of your own. I'm not going to pretend I've completely changed. I'm still your mother, and I still have all the instincts that made me who I am. But I'm working on it. Your father and I started seeing a counselor, can you believe it? And she's helping us understand some things we never questioned before. You were right to leave when you did. I couldn't see it at the time, but I can see it now. Lauren needed more than we could give her, and so did you. The difference is that Lauren's needs were visible, and yours weren't. We failed you by not seeing that. I'm sorry. I love you. Mom. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my desk drawer, next to the plane ticket confirmation from the trip that had started everything. Some bridges you have to burn. Some bridges you burn and then rebuild, slowly, board by board, from the ashes. I wasn't sure yet which kind this was. But I was willing to find out.